My guest, Brad Harrub, who is a PhD from the University of Tennessee School of Medicine, is going to talk to us about the National Geographic in November of 2004. Brad, why is that issue so important?
The cover story of that particular issue was Darwin wrong? And of course, you can imagine National Geographic, not one to shy away from the topic of evolution, says no, the evidence for evolution, they say, is overwhelming.
That's a pretty big no on the screen.
Yeah, you like the small font they use there.
They're making a point there, aren't they?
They are.
Now, what you're going to do for us on the show today is you're going to take this overwhelming evidence that they say they have, and you're going to take it point by point and refute their evidence.
Piece by piece. In fact, they start out by saying that evolution is a theory that you can take to the bank.
To the bank.
They go on to say that the supporting evidence is abundant, various, ever-increasing, solidly interconnected, easily available in museums, popular books, textbooks, and a mountainous accumulation of peer-reviewed scientific studies. No one needs to and no one should accept evolution merely as a matter of faith. The first thing we probably ought to talk about is the author of this particular study. A fellow by the name of David Quammen is the author. He apparently is the person who has the authority to tell us Darwin was not wrong.
And he is that because he is a world-famous scientist?
No. Actually, if you'll notice on the screen, he did an interview for the Seattle Post-Intelligencer reporter where he admitted, he said, I did my graduate work on William Faulkner. My training was all in literature, not biology, but when I couldn't make it as a fiction writer, and I would say...
Brad, you're setting me up here. It's just, you got to tell me, he made it as a fiction writer. He had to change genre a little. He couldn't write novels. But what we're going to get in these next few pages is some pretty interesting fiction.
Yeah, so, you know, basically he ends up by saying, I get to talk to biologists, walk through rainforests and see the world, and apparently that qualifies him to tell us that Darwin was right.
God bless the rainforest. Now listen, you have a PhD from the Medical School, University of Tennessee.
Yes, sir.
And yet you constantly have evolutionists tell you that you're not educated because you believe in creation.
Yeah, it's the whole intimidation of all intelligent people believe evolution.
Right, all educated people believe. And yet we have a fiction writer who's used to write the story to prove that evolution's true. That's classic.
Yes, it is.
All right, now, we need to get on with this. You've got this evidence, so one point at a time. The first thing is horse evolution.
Horse evolution, two terms we need to talk about very quickly. They basically represent the same creature, Eohippus and Hyracotherium, and simply put, it's the creature that we see right here at the bottom of the screen.
Okay.
Supposedly, this is the creature that all modern-day horses evolved from.
60 million years ago.
The only problem with that is that beautiful little timeline is not real. Harrub Nielsen commenting on this, he said, the family tree of the horse is beautiful and continuous only in the textbooks. In the reality provided by the results of research, it is put together from three parts, of which only the last can be described as including horses. The forms of the first part are just as much little horses as present-day daemons are horses. The construction of the horse is therefore a very artificial one, since it is put together from non-equivalent parts and cannot therefore be a continuous transformation series. Don, the point I want to make there is the year that was written.
1954.
1954. We already knew that this idea of horse evolution was imaginary all the way back in 1954, and yet November of 2004, National Geographic is marching this out as evidence.
50 years later, they're still saying this is some of the best evidence we have in the world to prove the theory of evolution.
That's right.
Incredible.
That's right.
When they already knew it was wrong for 50 years.
George Gaylord Simpson said the uniform, continuous transformation of Hyracotherium into Equus, so dear to the hearts of generations of textbook writers, never happened in nature.
That's amazing.
And ironically, because of that, some textbooks have actually dropped the horses and now they're going to camels.
Now, why is there any more evidence to use the same logic for camels than there was for horses?
Simply put, we've disproven the horses so often that they realize, hey, we've got caught, so to speak. So we're going to substitute. We're going to use a similar picture, because after all, that's what's teaching the kids, is this idea in their mind, this picture.
That's right.
What I want you to notice, though, Don, is who the publisher of that particular textbook is.
And that would be?
National Geographic.
National Geographic.
So here we have the publisher of a textbook who has dropped the idea of horse evolution because they know they've been caught in the past, and yet one of the first evidences they march out for us in November of '04. is horse evolution.
There's no integrity here.
Absolutely not. It doesn't stop there. Number two, embryology. Evolutionists would like us to believe that as a creature develops in the womb, whether it be a human or an animal, it goes through evolutionary steps. In fact, in their magazine, they say, Darwin wrote, the embryo is the animal in its less modified state, and that state reveals the structure of its progenitor.
There's assumption here beyond evolution. There's assumption that the whole evolutionary process happens in the womb. There's no evidence for that, is there?
Absolutely not. And yet, on the screen, you'll notice a picture that is probably very familiar to a lot of the viewers out there. This one was drawn by a fellow by the name of Ernst Haeckel, and basically put, these embryos, he would say, suggest evidence for evolution.
I remember that from my 8th grade science textbook, by the way.
It's still very, very popular in textbooks. The way we read it, if you look down here at the bottom, this would be a fish, a salamander, a turtle, a chicken, a pig, a couple of mammals, and finally over here at the end we have a human at 3 different embryological states. His point being that early on, up here at this top row, he would say that all creatures, whether it be a fish, a salamander, or a human, they were basically all the same. I mean, if you look across there, there's not a whole lot of difference. He, in fact, said that his turning point in his thinking was when he read Charles Darwin's book on the origin of species. And yet we know today Ernst Haeckel lied. He actually forged those images I just showed you. On this particular screen, you'll notice Haeckel's embryos are at the top, and the real picture is there at the bottom.
In fact, Hegel was disciplined as a professor for lying, right?
Yes, he was. In fact, the story goes that he was kicked out of the University of Jena. You know, we've known literally for centuries now he lied in his pictures, and yet they keep showing up.
So who's the bigger liar? The man who drew the pictures in the first place knowing they weren't true, or the people who have continued to perpetuate the lie to our children when they knew it wasn't true?
That's right. And even evolutionists admit it. In Natural History magazine in the year 2000, Stephen Jay Gould, very well-known evolutionist, he commented on Ernst Haeckel's embryos. Now, I want you to look at what he said. He said, "We should therefore not be surprised that Haeckel's drawings entered the 19th century textbooks, but we do, I think, have the right to be both astonished and ashamed by the century of mindless recycling that has led to the persistence of these drawings in a large number, if not majority, of textbooks."
That phrase, century of mindless recycling of lies.
Yes.
You know, we did a show, another show on indoctrination, and it just says to me, you know, if you're looking for truth, you don't reproduce lies.
Right.
But if you're trying to perpetuate a theory for which you have no evidence, then you don't care if it's true, you just care if kids believe it.
That's right.
And that's what they're doing now.
That's right. Sir Arthur Keith, in commenting on embryology, he said it was expected that the embryo would recapitulate the features of its ancestors from the lowest to the highest forms in the animal kingdom. Now that the appearance of the embryo at all stages is known, the general feeling is one of disappointment. The human embryo at no stage is arthropod in appearance. The embryo of the mammal never resembles the worm, the fish, or the reptile. Embryology provides no support whatsoever for the evolutionary hypothesis. If you look at the date when Sir Arthur Keith made this comment, it was 1932.
Yes.
We knew embryology provides no support whatsoever for evolutionary hypothesis, and yet we're marching it.
72 years later,
we're marching
it's still
it out.
the best thing we got, and we know it's a lie. Isn't that incredible?
And you ask yourselves, are we still putting it in the textbooks? Definitely.
Yeah, it's absolutely damning evidence.